Welcome to Beyond Sunday, the King of Kings podcast, where we dive a little bit deeper into our sermon series and see what we are taking beyond Sunday. My name is Dina Newsom, and I'm excited to have some great guests. One I haven't seen for a while and one brand new guest today. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, guys.
Well, I think I think I'm the one you haven't seen in a little while. Yeah. I'm Zach Zender, a pastor here at King of Kings, and get to help with the multi-site side of our ministry, which is super fun.
And I am Maryann. I am the new kids ministry director here at King of Kings.
Yay!
Do we have sound effects? Can we do welcome. Applause sound effect for that?
I don't know what's connected to what button, so I'm scared. The students use the same setup for their podcast. I'm not sure what will happen if I hit some buttons.
Some of those sounds might not be pleasant.
Yeah. All right. So in light of part of what Zach talked about in his message has inspired my opening
Wait, what I talked about or Seth?
I mean, Seth, sorry.
Okay. I was like, wait, did I preach?
I'm looking right at you. And yeah. You didn't remember that? Yeah.
It's so foggy.
Part of what Seth talked about, he kind of quoted some stats from a Swedish survey at the start of his message. Yeah. And in doing so, he impersonated the Swedish chef from the Muppets. I don't want to repeat the impersonation because I just couldn't do it justice. Yeah. Go watch it if you haven't yet. But in light of that, I wanted to ask, what's your favorite Muppet? Did you watch the Muppets when you were younger? And who is your favorite Muppet?
I did not watch the Muppets, but I do remember a song where they come out and it's like, yep. So that's all I remember from the Muppets.
That's a great song.
Yeah, I'm not a Muppet guy, believe it or not. So was Kermit the Frog a Muppet?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm gonna go Kermit.
Oh, Kermit Give me and Piggy and Ralph the dog. And,
okay.
And the two old guys in the balcony and the eagle, the Swedish chef, Beaker.
It sounds like you're a Muppet.
I was going to say.
Why don't you take all of our favorites and you just tell us your three favorites?
We're going to have to do a Muppet 101 with Dina.
They were classic movies of my time. Yeah.
Yeah. Kermit's got to be is he the most famous or do you think Piggy?
I would think Kermit. Yeah. I think Kermit has done a little bit more. Yeah.
Change the world.
His repertoire is a little larger. Yeah.
Nice.
I really liked, my favorite Muppet was Animal, who was the crazy drummer for the band that was on there. Nice. And I can't remember what the band was, except the singer was like Hot Lips McGee or something. I don't even remember. But all he would say was animal, animal. Like that
wasn't he the like pink one, fuzzy one, and it had like a black collar on? Yes, I remember that one.
And my older brother had an animal puppet, and he would just torture me with walking around, following me with that puppet. But I loved him because Animal was very passionate about whatever he was doing. Yeah, which mostly was drumming. But then he'd just get really into it, and that was exciting to me. That he was just really excited about what he was doing.
Was it Jim Henson? Right.
Jim Henson's
the
Muppets.
cool. So I never was a Muppet guy, but the cool part of the origin story that I do remember was like Kermit the Frog was the first that he created, and it was like out of a piece of like fabric that was basically trash. He came up with this Kermit the Frog with like just some rubbish and put it together, and like to think of what came out of that franchise.
Yes.
Through that is a pretty cool thing. Like what do we have that might be easily disposable that in the hands of the right person, the architect, the visionary, the designer, like what things might be. And so that's inspiring to me. I think that's pretty cool.
Whole sermon series.
Yeah, probably.
You do the Muppets. I have to remember that for next year.
Yeah, we'll have to have Seth probably lead it since it seems like he's maybe got a little more wisdom.
I did like the Swedish chef. It was very funny. I do also know that the Muppets tried to get famous when Saturday Night Live was starting. On the very first episode of Saturday Night Live, I don't remember if they made the cut or maybe they didn't make the cut, but like Jim and Kermit and like was supposed to be on that before they realized that those two genres did not really mix. Like their target audiences ended up being different.
A little bit different, yeah.
Nice.
All right. So that's kind of a sidetrack, but we're going to interrupt that with our switch to Pardon This Interruption. We're in week 3 of this message series. And Pastor Seth Flick is kind of taking us through the book of Mark, where there's an interesting setup where Jesus has like an inner story interrupted, or an outer story interrupted by an inner story. And then both stories get revolved. And so we're in week 3 of this. And what are you guys taking beyond Sunday from this week's message?
I'll get us started on that one, I guess. For me, it's the reflection of what fears are holding me back. What am I not trusting him with? I like to consider myself as a brave person and that I'm willing to try pretty much anything. But when you really break down into it, there's a long list of things that I'm too scared to even try or to consider. And so I think that this weekend's message definitely spoke to me, because fear is almost one of the things that stopped me from taking this role at King of Kings.
Oh.
So when you break down the fear of like how far are you willing to push against that fear, it speaks volumes as to where it'll take you.
Awesome.
Yeah. Having 2 boys that are teenagers and just kind of a love for the next generation and a belief in the next generation as well, or strong belief that, some of the stuff that Seth talked about of how, they're considered the anxious generation, they're nervous, they're mentally unwell, all these things that we've heard, and we've seen it. And to know that like previous generations play in, like, we can't just look at them and say they're that way because they're that way. They're in many respects that way because of how we've acted and what we've modeled. And so I really appreciated just his insight in this message of how when we live with fear or when we live with anxiety, that gets pressed down. And so that's the negative side, but the positive side, the opportunity side, which is beyond Sunday side for me, is I get to be a person who doesn't have to live by those things. And I can, and it's been modeled for me as well, I can actually be a positive voice to the next generation, to my boys, to the teenagers, to the youth, speak life into them. And hopefully we can reverse what we're seeing. And so that real sense of empowerment of like, yeah, the things that I do, the things that I say, the next generation, my boys, like they listen, they learn from it, they're model, like, and so let's be a positive example for those things as opposed to the opposite.
Yeah, I really like the phrasing that Seth used, and you used it too, where pressed down. They were pressed down into that generation. Just the imagery that gives of suppressing that when we want to raise up the next generation. That's a really good point. Yeah. What really spoke to me was when he referred to things as a big old bag of fear. You got to put down your big old bag of fear.
Right.
And I just thought, oh yeah, I'm carrying that right now.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll put down a few pieces of it this day and pick up a few pieces another day. But I don't always put down the whole bag of fear. And that was my big old bag of fear.
Yeah, when he mentioned that, like the visual of like me hugging this bag of fear and like crunched up in a ball is all I could imagine.
Yes.
Like, that's me.
Yeah, that's what really got me too. And the other thing that I really liked was when he said you can't move forward in a fetal position. And he literally like squatted down in the fetal position. I was like, you're not going really fast when he's trying to move forward. And that was powerful for me it seems comforting sometimes to be in that position, but we aren't going forward. We're just standing still. Yeah. Okay. So one of the questions Seth opened with was, how have you allowed fear to interrupt your life? Would either one of you care to speak to that on your own life? How has fear interrupted your life?
Yeah, I think fear. So I tend to, like on the spiritual gift test, faith is one of the top for me. And so I tend to think that I don't struggle with fear as much. And I tend to operate more on faith. But that's also not 100% true. There's times when fear has gotten the best of me. And so for me though, I think the challenge is to know, like, I can be a pretty, and it's good or bad, like a pretty good, like big risk taker. And, is that just being a risk taker? Is that operating by faith? And I'm not always sure. Is it a risk? Is it faith? Is it God? Is it my own selfish? So for me, I'm trying to figure out less of like, I'm trying to figure out, like, is the things God is calling me towards, is that God actually calling me towards that, or is that my own selfish desires and intention? And what's the boundary there? Because I tend to operate with, if I know it's from God, like, cool, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna do it. And so probably in my life, the things, it feels like about every 3 years, there's something that, if life doesn't interrupt my own faith walk, I feel like I kind of have to do that to just stay engaged, if you will, and to continue to grow. Because some people, they get put in really difficult situations. Life hands them some really challenging things, and they're forced to kind of grow in their faith. And sometimes those things happen to me, but there's other times where seasons are pretty good and my faith can actually get really stale if I just stay stable. And so what can I do to kind of press and live and operate more by faith? And so I think that's a little bit of where I'm trying to figure out what that means for me right now, because it's been a little more than 3 years, since, and my wife's probably super grateful, because every time it's like, oh, we got to do something big. It's like, oh, it's a major, and so, but it's also led to some really cool things. Like 2011, we planted a church. 2014 was the year I went for a world record for the longest speech ever. 2017 was the year we came out with Red Letter Challenge. 2020 was the time we moved more fully into Red Letter. And moved to King of Kings in 2021. And so, like, it's been like every 3 or 4 years, and I feel like there's an itch there that, like, again, nothing major needs to change, but what is it that's going to test my faith, if that makes sense? And so that's really where I'm wrestling right now, is what does that next step look like for me in my faith, to really put it out on the line and not get comfortable and complacent.
Yeah, I feel like Zach, and on my spiritual gifts test, faith is also one of my strengths. And one of the things I've found throughout the years as I've been growing in my faith is the times that I've allowed fear to intercede in my life and just stop me from doing things, I've missed out. The more I grow in my faith, the more I realize that fear is one of those things that the enemy uses to stop us from experiencing the gifts that God has for us. I remember I was invited to to Ecuador, one day prior to mission tickets being bought. And I was terrified to say yes, because I was like, well, what does that mean? How do I pack? Like, what do I get? But I said yes. I said, God, like, this is something, I'm going to go. We get there and we go on, I think, day 3 or 4. We ended up going to a cathedral where you walk into this tower, and there's this really small staircase that takes you up to this tower where there's no protection and no limit as to how many people can go up there. No wait, like, there's just no control. And I'm terrified of heights. And I was not going to do it. And then I kept telling myself, when will I have this opportunity again to come and experience this view, this whole scenario? So I forced myself to go up there. I was terrified and excited all at the same time. And I came down and I was just in awe of what I saw, in awe of just how beautiful it was to be up there. And then the fact that I survived it all. And so I keep telling myself that if fear is what's stopping me from trying something, then is that something that the enemy is keeping me from enjoying in life? Like you said, Zach, that every time that you've said, let's move forward and let's do something big, it comes with fear, but then you push past it and then even bigger blessing comes from it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what a lot of us, we get so stuck on the little details. Like, what if the stairs break? What if this? What if that? What if, but if you just kind of say, I'm doing it, and you go, then you're in awe of what you've experienced. So,
yeah. So my family are big Disney fans, and actually I'm headed to Disneyland in California next week. So there'll be a fill-in for the Beyond Sunday podcast. But I loved roller coasters when I was younger.
Right.
And I was fearless of them. Yeah. I didn't like the really, really crazy ones, but I could go on them. And then it had been many years since we went. And then when my children started to be like more adult age and we were taking trips together, we went, and I realized I was terrified of some of the roller coasters. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to go on them and share that experience with my kids, but I was not able, I couldn't get over nope, I can do this little, I'll go on the the kiddie coaster with the little grandkids. Yeah. I'll ride that all day. But some of the big ones was just not my children are 18, 27, and 28. So they love to tease me about this. And so when we go, they just give me a hard time. Oh, are you going to ride this one this time, Mom? Or they'll try to get me on one without telling me like what it's really like. And so I finally said, my son had been hounding me, and I finally was like, okay, I'll go on Thunder Road Mountain, I think is the name of it. I'm really bad at the names, but it's not like you don't go upside down. Yeah. There's not like a huge drop or anything like that, but it's a roller coaster. And it was so much fun. And I just remember sitting on that ride going, okay, how can I use this and the freedom I feel right now, which seems like the smallest, stupidest thing, to translate into other things in my life where I'm scared to step out, just like you talked about, if you can push through that, what's waiting on the other side. And I just am still, maybe I'll ride a bigger roller coaster.
You got it. Trip. You got it, Dina.
I'll come on. Report back.
Got to report back.
I'll validate that though, because as I've gotten older, I'm scared of roller coasters, and I'm scared of the Ferris wheel at Shields. Oh, yeah. I cannot.
Oh, wow.
I think it comes more from my understanding now that humans built this, and it's just nuts and bolts that put it together. And I do have a fear of that.
Yeah. Would you rather AI build it, Dina, or is that taking this conversation off track?
It's just when I didn't think about that, it was just a perfectly safe structure.
As a kid, you didn't think about how was this built. You're just like, this is awesome.
Yeah, I'm not sure when we all turn lame and stop enjoying roller coasters, but count me in that camp too. So if actually, now that we've talked about it a little bit more, I think sometimes, and this is maybe true for others, but true for me, sometimes when it's the bigger things, I'm not as afraid, but it's like the smaller things that I ought to not be as afraid so like what Seth mentioned was, that 2% of the people have had 2 conversations or less, or 98% have had 2 conversations or less about Jesus with others. And so if we're going to be sharing the good news, like the fear that I have of just having a simple conversation, should it provide itself an opportunity? So those are things that I do struggle with. It's like, why do I struggle sometimes on what feels tinier or smaller, and I don't struggle at the stuff that feels bigger and larger? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Why do I trust God for my eternity, right? So my eternal salvation is secure, which means I walk and live differently now. And yet I trust him for that, like the end, but then the day to day, I don't. So I don't know if there's others that feel that way too. It's like we place these big trust in God on the biggest thing that matters. And yet for me, it's the smaller things that sometimes I'm afraid of that I ought not be.
I would agree with that. I find that to be true in my own life too. And I don't know why. I don't know. I don't know. I think sometimes the bigger things, it's easier to release because we have the faith that he can handle the bigger things. But maybe, I guess for me, sometimes I feel like my little things are bothersome to him.
Yeah.
And that's not true. And I know that he cares about every hair on my head and every tiny worry and concern that I have throughout the day. But it feels like it's too little that I should be able to handle it myself. And I'm not willing to release those or trust him completely with those things that seem almost too small for him. And that's, I don't know. I'm just thinking of this as I'm talking. Yeah. So. All right. So we're talking in this book of Mark how we have the outer story and the inner story. And so this week's was really interesting. Zach, can you kind of highlight what our outer story and inner story were this week? The 2 stories Yeah,
it was from Mark chapter 6. And so there were 2 stories. The first was Jesus sending out the 12 apostles, sending them out 2 by 2 and commissioning them to do incredible things, right? Having authority over unclean spirits, and being able to preach the good news and casting out demons and anointing with oil people who are sick and healing them. So some really amazing things, and sending them 2 by 2, and at the same time telling them that you don't need to take anything with you. Right, that's where Seth was brought in the bag idea, that there's no bag, there's no bread, there's no money. Like you're not taking anything except for your sandals, and that's pretty much it. And so that was the outer story of Jesus sending these disciples out. and really commissioning them to do big and amazing things and to put their faith on the line and not bring anything with them. So that was the outer story. And then the inner story was a disciple, not one of the 12, but a prophet, Jesus' cousin, John the Baptist, a story of him actually being beheaded. Here was one that was sent out, that was doing incredible things. And actually his life ended as a martyr for Jesus. And so it's, there's this one, in one story, he's sending them out 2 by 2 and don't take anything, but don't be afraid. And in the very next story we're reading, it actually caused the death of John the Baptist. And so Jesus brings these 2 stories at the same time. And I think for us, it's important to look at these 2 next to each other like Seth did, and to remember that no matter what our lot is in this world, we're still called to be the light of Christ. And at times that means we're going to be going into cities and doing incredible things for the Lord, and it's going to work out. And at times it means we're going to go into the cities and it's not going to work out. And at times it's going to mean that following Jesus will cost you your life. And we've seen that in our nation in the last couple of weeks with, there's so much talk about Charlie Kirk and what happened, and lots of opinions on him as a person, but he was a believer in Jesus, a follower of Jesus, and really professed a faith in Jesus. And that very well could be a major reason why he's dead now. And so this is not just 2,000 years ago, it's today as well. And to know that following Jesus has a cost to it. And at the same time, the worst thing that this world could bring to us as a follower of Jesus, which is death, is the best news for a guy like John the Baptist or Charlie Kirk. Like, they're good right now. Now, it leaves behind it a wave of just trauma and tragedy and sadness that is very real. But for Charlie himself and for those that follow Jesus, for John the Baptist, for anyone that follows Jesus, like, it's going to end well. And you have a really awesome future ahead of you. And so anyway, I thought it was kind of interesting that these 2 are right next to each other, because it's like sending these 2 out 2 by 2. You're going to be, doing great things. Don't take it with you. And then here's a story. The first story, right after that, we see one that gave his life for Jesus. And so you never know.
I really liked Seth kind of pointed out that the disciples, when he was sending them out, extra provisions, if they were going to try to take extra provisions, that was weight that was holding them back. But he asked him to take their staff and sandals, because that was what they needed to move forward. I liked that analogy there that he kind of made about just keeping to move forward.
Yeah, as I think about how Jesus prepared the disciples and told them, just go with the staff and the sandals. I think it makes me reflect of how many times we as people try to use a list of excuses as to why not to go. And we're constantly thinking about like, well, I still need to do this. I still, like Seth mentioned, oh, well, just one more training, one more class, one more. But at what point then are you going to actually move and go? Because that's what he calls us to do, is move and go. He didn't say move and go when I give you this, move and go when I've done this for you. He says move and go, and then he will provide whatever it is that you need. And I hadn't thought about the comparison of like how John the Baptist was being beheaded and then they're being sent out to go and do his work. I feel like a lot of times people think going out and doing God's work is simply just joy and spreading love and care, but you don't think about the ugly. You don't think about the people that are going to criticize you and judge you and hate you for, speaking truth. And the comparison of the fact that was happening to John while the disciples were going out, I'm sure they were scared at that time too.
And I think the key is that following Jesus, truly doing it, is dangerous work. But Jesus, the question is he enough? Like, is he enough for you that you're willing to go no matter where he calls, and you're willing to go with nothing but him? And that's, I think, the version of Christianity that Americans really struggle with. Is like, yeah, we'll follow Jesus, but we want to make sure we have our bank accounts in good order, and we've got a house and a shelter and our 401ks, and you name it, like whatever 15 things. It's what I love so much about when the disciples followed Jesus. They immediately jumped, left the boats, and followed him. I love the story of Elisha in the Old Testament, that when Elijah tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, let's go, he burnt his plows and killed his oxen, and they had a party that night and celebrated. But he essentially left his past behind because a better opportunity for his future came. And in a way that he couldn't actually get to his past because he burnt it down. And I think a lot of us are like 1 foot in, 1 foot out disciples, where we'll try something, but we're going to hang on to everything. Mm-hmm. We're going to make sure that our bag, even if I'm not carrying it, like I know where it's packed and I can go get it if I need it. I can go get it right now. And so what I love about this story is that like it really forces us to ask the question, at the end of the day, is Jesus and Jesus alone enough for you to do what he calls you to do? It's dangerous, but it's wholesome, it's rewarding, it's fulfilling, and there's no calling like it, but it doesn't actually mean equal earthly success. And that's the challenge, is I think we like this 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I'm going to keep my bags with me as I go.
Well, and I think as people, we're taught to expect the reward now.
Yeah.
We want the recognition now. We want everything positive to happen as soon as we do it. Like, give me my prize. Whereas when it comes to doing this, like, it doesn't come until after death. Mm-hmm. But we know that, just like we do with Charlie Kirk. Like, we know that he's up there and he's reaping everything that he worked so hard to sow, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just, I think, having that mentality of like, yeah, maybe right now I'm not having all of the prize, but I know that in the end, and I think that's the question, is it worth it for you? Is he enough for you? Is what is going, like, being in his presence at some point going to be enough for you? And for me, that's exciting. Like, the thought of when this world is done for me, like, I will get to be up there and I'll get to worship and I'll get to hear all these people singing and the light, and just to experience his joy so close is exciting. Yeah. But that's easy to lose when you're feeling down and scared and, exhausted. So
that's really good. So Seth kind of talked about 3 different points, and in his message, where he talked about faith fights, fear folds, and followers finish. How did those jump out at you guys, or what did one of those really speak to you or made you think of something?
Yeah, as a pastor, I love alliteration, so good job, Seth. Followers finish is the one that yeah, they're all great. Followers finish is the one that I think is so fabulous, because these same disciples that he sent out 2 by 2 that would largely in the Gospels go out and make a mess of things, end up finishing really well for Jesus. And it's super inspiring. And it's one of the best physical, evidential aspects of the resurrection, is when you actually look at what happened to the lives of the disciples. This cowardly, how about let's keep on the alliteration, these fickle failures,
there you go,
right? Became faithful followers once they saw the post-resurrected Jesus. Like, they were changed. Like Peter, the dude that denied Jesus 3 times by a charcoal fire, 52 days later is preaching in front of thousands of people about who God is, who Jesus is. He couldn't say the name Jesus in front of one servant girl 52 days prior. He is a changed man. He is the leader of the church, a fabulous church. And he would go on to be martyred for his faith, dying on a cross upside down because he didn't deem himself worthy to die in the same manner as his friend Jesus. And all of the disciples would end up giving their lives for Jesus, martyred early, with the exception of John, who somehow got away to the island of Patmos, which is where he wrote the book of Revelation. And where we have this beautiful vision, right, that you were just talking about, that one day we're going to be with the angels and the light of Christ is going to be enough light to light that there will no more sun needed at that point. And so for me, I just love that followers finish. And it doesn't mean we're going to get it perfect in this world, because I certainly don't. And I struggle, but I do want to be one that finishes well. And that in Christ, I have everything I need to finish well, because of his grace. Every time I screw up, he brings me right back. And so I can finish. I can have, 23 bad hours of the day, but I got the 24th hour that I can turn my life around and I can start over again the next day. So followers finish is something that speaks well to me.
Yeah. I love that. For me, it's going to be the fear fights. I've seen so many people, so many amazing leaders that continue to fight for their church. They continue to fight for their family. They continue to fight for their loved ones. And I think the biggest reason that they fight so hard is the fear of not having them with them in heaven. Like, why would you push so hard? And why would you pray so constantly? Why would you encourage someone so frequently and accept heartbreak time after time after time? It's because of that fear of knowing that if they let go of God, then they're not going to be in the presence of God. And I know that for me, that's one of the things that I know he transformed my life. And the fear of going back to what it used to be is enough to push me and say, no, I refuse. Like, I don't want to go back to that loneliness. I don't want to go back to that sensation of not knowing his love. And so I think the fear fights for me is what speaks volumes of like, this is why as moms, as teachers, as parents, as friends, we fight so hard for the people that we love because we fear not sharing that love of Christ with them.
So you kind of mentioned like as moms. So Seth made a parental reference and he talked about how this story and the parenting of Herodias, who was Herod's wife, that basically told her daughter when she was offered from Herod the opportunity to ask for anything that she wanted, this woman who didn't like John the Baptist convinced her daughter to ask for his head. That's one example of parenting. And Seth compared that with from the Old Testament, Mordecai's influence on Esther and how that really empowered and raised Esther up to ask for things for the kingdom. How does that comparison make you think about your own parenting? We're all parents here. Like, what does that do to convict you or celebrate you? How did that jump out at you?
This is a season of a lot of changes for my family. I was just telling you earlier that we're, hopefully going to close on a house by the end of this week. And that means a move. And my daughter has told me time and time again, like, I'm scared. I don't want to leave this house. I'm scared. And I tell her like, everything's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. We're going to be together and it'll be great. And she's always asking me like, how do you know? I'm like, honestly, I don't. I don't know, but I do know that God is in control and we trust God, and that's enough. But if I sit in it, I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I know? And that's when I start praying, like, Lord, help me out because I don't know. But I think a lot of times my daughter has seen me react in fear and then push against fear. And I just hope that it's more times she sees me push against it than submit to it. So.
Yeah. And I don't think like living in this life's all about like, how do we avoid fear? Right. I think that fear is going to come here and there. And that's actually, if you're putting yourself out on the line for Christ, like you should expect some fear. So I don't think it's like avoid it, and that, life's going to be perfect. No, we're going to be okay because Christ is in us and with us and around us. And worst case happens, we're still great. Right. And so, yeah, for me, when you ask about parent, I feel better about my parenting after I read a story like this because I'm not that bad, right? But I never made the connection. I thought that was really cool to Esther and Mordecai, the Old Testament, and how one sort of family figure was so positive in that. And of course, this one in the New Testament with John the Baptist and Herodias was so negative. And I just think it kind of doubles down on what we talked about earlier, that like our decisions matter. And if we're in especially somewhat of a leadership or influential figure of some type, like to know that our words carry weight and what we do like is really significant. We probably all have moments in our life, I'm sure our listeners out there, like someone has said something to you and it was just a word, could be good or bad, and it had a disproportionate amount of effect in your life, positively or negatively. Like it was just one thing they said and it just totally changed your life on a positive or negative side. And like, so to know that my words matter. What I say matters. What I do, especially with my two boys, like especially now when they're in high school, like it really matters, is just a really cool thing. And I'd never made that connection before with Mordecai and Esther. And I thought that was awesome that Seth made it. Yeah.
Yeah, I typically feel like a really great parent until I hear a message like this. And then I'm like, oh, well, what about this? And I really started thinking kind of earlier when we were talking about pressing those fears down. It really made me stop and think, what fears am I putting on my kids? Not necessarily through like, fears that I'm convincing them to have, but just things in my own life that I'm almost setting up an expectation for in them. And I'm thinking of when my ex-husband and I were first married early on, we had no money. Like we struggled financially, got married very young, had a baby right away. And we, for years, lived in a financial struggle. And so when my daughter, who's now married and has 2 kids, when she was first married, I kept expecting there to be this financial struggle because that's what I had experienced. And it's kind of like a stereotypical, you struggle when you first get married. She and her husband were never in that type of situation, but I was constantly asking, well, are you okay on this money? And so was her father and her grandfather. Like all of us had kind of pushed this fear into them that then she was like, gosh, are we okay? Like, I think we're doing fine. But and I started thinking of little things like that. What fears have I pushed on my kids through my own experiences? And while I think I'm teaching them all the right things and empowering them in all the right ways, what am I subconsciously putting on them that is a fear of mine because of my experience that they've never even had to go through? And I was thinking about when I went through my divorce, how I felt like I was starting over, and I was in my mid-40s and starting over, and the fears that I had about just little simple things that I would put on my kids through that experience that they didn't need to know, or they didn't need that experience of just things that I would in my daily life, like, oh my gosh, my headlight on my car is out and I don't know how to change it. And I don't know who to call to change it because that was something that my husband used to do. And I would get all worked up and my kids would get worked up. Oh my gosh, mom's headlight is out. What are we going to do? Like somebody get the Google, just of simple things like that didn't need to be, there needed to be no anxiety in that situation. But my fear then caused issues for them. And so I was just kind of like ticking off the list of where I thought I was a pretty good parent. This humbled me a little. Thanks, Seth. No. But that's where you grow. Those are the times that you grow, because then I think about how do I continue to influence them in positive ways? Like you said, words carry weight. How do I speak life into them and into my grandchildren now? Like those are the next people that I'm looking to impact. Yeah.
And I think too, like giving them opportunity, right? I think some of us who are older, like who maybe have positions or jobs, we have opportunity to pass those on to the younger generations and to let them step into leadership roles. But it's actually our own fear that sometimes like we want to hold on to. So we're holding on to something and we're afraid. And at the same time, we're keeping them from stepping into things that God maybe designed for them. And so we still are living with that fear. And I think we've got to get better at just being more open-handed, not just with words, but what about an action to show I'm not afraid to let you lead this and to let you step into this. And I'll show you once, but then I want you to do it the next time. Right. And so I think we have to be more willing to not just with our words, but with our actions, show especially the younger generation that you are welcome at the table, and you're welcome at the table a heck of a lot earlier than you thought. We already want you here. So let's go and let's do this together. And then let's have you lead. And God will take care of it. Like us who are older, like we're going to be taken care of if we're letting go of these things. Like that's what God wants.
Well, and that's our way of showing him trust. Like you talked about earlier, how is it easier to trust him with the big things?
Right.
That's kind of a big thing, but it's maybe still sometimes hard to let go. Yeah. All right. So as we wrap up today, what are your final takeaways from this message or this series as you've heard it? What do you got, Maryann?
I think one of my biggest takeaways is, what what fears am I pressing down onto my kids and future generations, especially working in kids ministry. I'm going to encounter a lot of, other generations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to be aware of where it is that I need to grow and trust more. That, and then I think just how tightly am I holding on to my fear backpack? Like,
Your big old bag of fear.
Am I coddling it, or have I decided to set it down for a little bit? So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked the halftime pep talk, and where Seth even got kind of specific, talking to those of you that are in the first quarter, the younger, and then those of you that are in that mid-season, and those of you that are older. I really liked that. And I really related to, like, that's what we need. We need that. But that's what we have the opportunity to get through, like, something like listening to this podcast. It's a little pep talk, hopefully, or coming to worship and being with your Christ family, or being in a connect group, spending some time in the scripture. Those things are all like little ways that God gives you a pep talk. And I liked the idea of that, your little halftime pep talk.
Yeah. I'm actually, reading that halftime book with a few dads right now. It's really great. And I'm squarely in that middle section, right? Where, I want to leave a life of legacy, of significance. And so for me, it's challenging me to really think through, God, how do you want to use me? Are you enough for me? And if you're enough, then what does that look like? And how I pursue you, how I follow you, and how can I then at the same time pursuing you and following you, help raise up the next generation, and pour into them belief and words and opportunities. What does that look like in my life? And I feel like God's allowing me to kind of dream a little bit these last few weeks, and continuing to dream about what that could look like, which is really neat. I've been on such a content creation marathon that's felt like I've sprinted, and I think I just finished it, which is fabulous. And so now I'm starting to dream then about, what does this look like to really pour into the next generation in a deeper way, to show that you are enough. Yeah.
Yeah, your content creation guide, we get to kind of jump into in a couple weeks. We've got one more week of Pardon This Interruption with Seth, and then we're jumping into the Giving Challenge.
Yeah, we're going to get generous. There you go.
Yeah, we are. All right. Red Letter Challenge, go. Okay, thank you guys so much for being here today. And until we get together again, let's keep living our faith beyond Sunday.